My goodness, what a year. There's been so many AAA games featuring female characters, and it happens that all of them are trash, with perhaps one exception. I didn't think it was possible, but here we are. So I really don't play that many video games anymore. By that I mean that whenever I do, I play games that I know I already enjoy. So that is old games. Everything new is so absolutely terrible. I don't even follow gaming news. Well, I guess the only modern game I play is Dark Tide. But that's mostly because I'm a huge Warhammer 40k fan. But anyway, the point is, I don't really make video game reviews because I don't play video games anymore. But when it comes to franchises such as Silent Hill, I gotta make an exception. Let me get this out of the way first before I talk about Silent Hill F. Modern horror as a genre is dead because most people fundamentally misunderstand what horror means in the first place. Horror isn't simply imagery, blood, gore, and death. Horror is an emotion. Horror is meant to disturb the comfortable into the uncomfortable. Essentially, horror is at its best when it's at its worst. This is something I say quite often, especially when I talk about Warhammer 40k. But this is also why Silent Hill 2, the original, is still seen as the best game in the series. The main themes, that is, sex and death, were baked so well in the original, it still shocks players to this day. By comparison, the sanitized version, that is the remake, completely fucks it up, stripping away the erotic themes of the original for the sake of not offending the modern audience. To me, this is a clear sign the culture is run by adults that grew up in very sheltered environments and who can understand general concepts but lack actual life experience to back them up. So the slightest exposure to the horrors of the world completely destroys them. They don't even want to be exposed to them in fiction, so they end up missing the point of feeling horror. The Silent Hill 2 remake misses the point because the West is very comfortable with violence but despises actual horror. Horror is the consequence of one's own actions. Accountability. Silent Hill F repeats the same mistake because it shares the same modern feminine aversion to accountability. That is what horror is at the end of the day. Consequences. A few years ago, back in 2022, a new Silent Hill game was announced. The beloved franchise, featuring the titular fictional town of Silent Hill in America, finally spreading its roots to the land the game creators were originally from, Japan. I was a bit worried because of how they were gonna try to explain the Silent Hill effect taking place all the way in Japan instead of the Native American grounds the original town was founded on, which causes all of these paranormal effects. So I thought, oh shit, here we go again. They are gonna make a mess out of things, just like in Silent Hill 4. But then they announced the main character was gonna be a schoolgirl, and I got excited again. No, you perverts, I'm not into that stuff. I'm just saying that a young girl as the main character will imply the gameplay will heavily lean onto its horror elements instead of combat. I mean, what kind of combat system will a schoolgirl have? Ah, shit. They did it again. Gameplay aside, Silent Hill F is a black pill to any creative writer. It's a reminder that cool and original ideas don't mean jack shit. It's all about the execution. For example, traditionally, Silent Hill has always featured regular people in the leading role, meaning that for the most part, most of them barely knew how to fight. Their movements will be sluggish, their efforts at combat weak, gun mechanics were awkward. It's what happens when everyday people get trapped in hell. Silent Hill 6 Homecoming tried to spice things up by turning the main character into a special forces veteran, and it ruined all the magic by turning the game into more of an action adventure, very similar to Resident Evil 4. Even Silent Hill 8, which was the entry I was the most excited about back in 2010 when it got announced, ended up being garbage. I remember hearing about the main character being an escaped convict, which broke the traditional standard of the everyday goody two shoes type of lead we were all used to, and thinking things are gonna get real this time. If Silent Hill is an absolute nightmare for the average person and their inner demons, an escaped convict or a group of them are gonna go through absolute hell in there. And then the game came out and it sucked again. I know there's a debate online about people arguing whether or not Silent Hill F is a true Silent Hill game, and I don't really care. The best game in the series never really cared about the original lore. It pretty much does its own thing, and it still became the best game in the franchise. What matters to me is that the game offers me an introspective journey through the disturbing psyche of an interesting character. Silent Hill F is everything I fear and far worse. I don't want to make a detailed review of the game. I think many other YouTubers have already done that. Under the Mayo has an in-depth 25-minute video that covers pretty much everything I hated with the gameplay, which is a shitty attempt at a Souls-like combat game. And then there's others like Synthetic Man, who has a very much black pill chat-cell take that raises some valid cultural critique, even if it's a little bit schizo. What I want to talk about here is the failure of Silent Hill F as a horror piece, and how it marks as the final nail in the coffin for the franchise if everyone keeps considering this game the future of Silent Hill. Right off the bat, Silent Hill F's story is terrible. We have our main character, Hinako, living her life in a rural village along with her dysfunctional family in 1960s Japan. Her father is an abusive alcoholic and her mother simply puts up with it. We know she has an older sister which she admires, but then she exits her life after getting married, leaving her feeling abandoned. She has some friends, a boy and two other girls whose names I don't even remember. And between them they have this love triangle of sorts, which Hinako doesn't really care about. And they all feel a mixed bag of resentment towards her. One day, a fog envelops the entire village and she finds herself running away and eventually fighting monsters. A guy wearing a fox mask shows up and she learns she's bound to an ancient curse, and she's chosen to end it through a forced ritual marriage meant to appease the land's gods. At first, through the first three endings, the game feels more like a modern feminist power trip because it very quickly abandons the horror elements it should be focused on and instead keeps hammering the message that women are inherently oppressed. Like, no shit. We all know this. It's a genre by itself. The Wizard of Oz, Alice in Wonderland. Even one of my favorite mangas of all time, Berserk, has an entire arc dealing with this concept as a secondary plot, which shows how well it works every single time it's baked into a story. But somehow, Silent Hill F completely drops the ball. By this, I don't mean that the themes it deals with are weak. They are actually pretty serious and valid, but they are executed incredibly poorly because they are too focused on sending a message of female empowerment. Instead of showing fear through pacing and personal consequence, it tells you what fear means. It turns horror into a lecture about empowerment and victimhood, which kills any immersion and suspense. The worst case is the main character, Hinako, lacking agency throughout the whole story. And it's not like this is a mistake in the writing. It is the purpose of the writing, which is ironic because the game starts with her making an assertive choice. She doesn't want to be like her mother or the rest of women around her and submit to patriarchal rules. But this theme ends very quickly once you realize she's just a passive observer in her own story. Every event happens to her instead of because of her. The supernatural attacks, the discovery of her power, her role in the story, all occur without her initiating anything. She doesn't really choose, she reacts. And at the climax of the story, even in the real ending, she doesn't destroy the curse after any moral deliberation. The narrative positions her as someone fulfilling her destiny or acting through instinct. The resolution to everything feels destined to be instead of willed by Hinako. It blows my mind how this was a conscious decision, making a story bad for the sake of making the audience feel bad. This is not how it's done. Once you unlock the real ending, it is revealed that the culprit of the whole supernatural phenomenon is this strange fungus-like being that feeds on despair and repression, especially on those whose souls are pure. Hence, Hinako was chosen. So, the more she fails to assert herself, the stronger this fungus-like being grows. Her passivity up until this point wasn't just a mere character flaw, as we're first led to believe, but a whole theme within the lore. The fungus, the Hana Shibito, literally erodes free will. It's parasitic in body and in spirit. It sedates its host's sense of individuality to create harmony within the greater consciousness of the infection. It's the most complex form of bad writing I ever seen. Silent Hill F's entire narrative structure tries to make passivity and victimhood seem profound. If Hinako's entire thematic purpose is to be acted upon by her family, by social pressure, or by supernatural forces, then she cannot sustain any narrative on her own. Main characters drive meaning through choice, perspective, or internal conflict. Hinako has none of these things. She doesn't change the world changes through her. You can't build psychological suspense out of someone whose psychology is being erased. This vessel archetype only works as a secondary role within a bigger narrative. Someone who embodies the infection, curse, or concept, let's say like Alyssa from Silent Hill 1. If you elevate this secondary role to the status of a protagonist, the whole structure collapses. There's no logical way in which you can construct a cohesive narrative that would be satisfying in any way. All you can get is a mediocre story at best. And that's because every meaningful question you could ask yourself about Hinako, like what will she do? How will she change? What does she realize? Already has a predetermined answer. She won't. It's a narrative stalemate. Great for secondary characters, but terrible for the main one. And you might be saying, this is genius. This is exactly what they were going for. Making you feel despair no matter what you choose. Like women feel in real life. And to that I say, fuck no. You don't deliver good narrative themes by making a mediocre product. If you're gonna make the audience feel bad, you're gonna reward them through some sort of revelation, instead of just misery porn. If you were creatively rich with the same intention in mind, you'd end up coming up with The Shining or Alien, and offer people a unique experience from the female perspective. Transformative, memorable stories with deeply human characters. And to an extent, I agree it takes a genius to fail this fucking hard. The story is complex, but it takes zero risks, neither in the plot or the execution. Silent Hill F only offers a false sense of depth, an illusion. At first glance, it appears to have thematic depth through generational trauma, femininity, repression, but it's all inert, lifeless, because the supposed center of that trauma isn't conscious enough to interpret it. You can't explore identity through a character that never has one. That's why I'm saying it's the most complex form of bad writing I've ever seen. Ambitious in concept, but absolutely hollow in practice. Someone should have checked the script and said, guys, we need to start over. This is unfixable. But they either fired that guy or they just chose a team of yes men and women to handle this whole project. It's such a disservice to people with real trauma because it only exploits it. It offers no solutions other than a vague attempt at motivating people to figure out their inner strength and move on somehow after accepting the whole world is against you. Fucking insane message. It's so pretentious to call this game psychological horror. It's more akin to cheap therapy, retail therapy, the kind that tells you how everything you don't like is a result of the world being mean, instead of telling you to take fucking ownership. That's real strength. That perhaps you deserve some of the bad things happening or going on around you. And of course, there could be horrible things that may have happened to you in the past, or perhaps they are still happening. But instead of dwelling on them and building resentment, you should still go out there and make life happen. Be kind to your friends, family, or strangers, even when they're not being kind to you. Be patient. Care about the immediate world around you instead of pretending it owes you something or letting it rot away as a form of quiet resignation. Pain by itself is a transformative experience. It's not simply there to degrade you. It can humble you and make you understand the pain others are going through and awaken compassion, understanding, and even forgiveness. It can teach you that instead of trying to change things, any real change for the better must start from within. In many ways, pain is a purifying experience, but only when you face it honestly. These all may sound stupid and unreasonable if you're an immature jackass running away from accountability, but this is what Silent Hill 2 and 3 are literally about. The fog world around James isn't just some preordained event happening because he's the chosen one. It just exists to punish him. And not for what others did to him, but for what he did to himself. Every monster in the fog is born out of his choices. They are the ultimate mirror of agency. Even at the end, the plot twist originates from him rediscovering his own guilt. And not by accident, it's his own decision to accept reality. That he killed Mary, his wife. And even then, that's still only the beginning of the real choices he has yet to make. To accept the punishment of his own conscience, to deny it, or to figure out how to redeem himself. And Silent Hill 3's Heather isn't that far off either. She goes into Silent Hill because she needs to figure out her real identity. And the trauma of discovering the truth, that she is the result of a messed up cultic ritual, almost drives her insane. Which then drives her to make more conscious decisions to either embrace vengeance and become a monster goddess in a new world, or to reject this temptation through self-restraint, refusing to let her own pain define her. Her entire arc turns pain into empathy. She goes back home as a different person because she acted when she had to, and not just because of external events unfolding. Her whole story is about spiritual resistance, rejecting the idea that pain automatically ennobles you or makes you special, and making an identity out of your own trauma. These two characters are incredibly human. They are people stuck, running away from their actions and who they really are, only to have all of it come back and crash on them. Both James and Heather have to face who they really are and what they've done. And this is an incredibly painful experience, but through overcoming this pain, by accepting it, they finally find peace and true freedom. They can finally go back to their old lives and live with a clear view of things and of themselves. On the other hand, in Silent Hill F, Hinako simply breaks the curse. That is the fungus wheel that was keeping her bound as a sacrifice, and then simply fucks off. She abandons her family, her village, and her friends, and goes on a journey to find herself with the fungi still living inside her. The game gives up on the empowerment fantasy at that point. Hinako is swallowed by generational trauma, by superstition, by the curse, and by the fungus, to the point her final choice, that is leaving the village, feels hollow because she's already gone long before her own choice is made. It's the illusion of choice after the self has completely dissolved. She becomes one with the parasite. She gains independence at the same time she's already completely lost it. It's like if James Sunderland walked out of Silent Hill saying he forgave himself while still holding Mary's corpse. Again, this works great for a secondary character whose sole purpose is to set up the main story. But as the central one holding the story together, this is terrible. And maybe you're saying, but Drifter, the writers were just trying to be original and break off the narrative stereotype. No, you moron. This isn't breaking off any stereotypes. This is dropping off a cliff and crush it head on onto the rocks. The people writing the shit were so focused on making sure the themes were prevalent in the plot, they strip Hinako and her story away from any character progression. Which is incredibly ironic because taking agency away from women is the main theme of this fucking game. And this is my main point for the whole video. The story in this game is just a black pill for women by feminist incels or femcels, disguised as empowerment. It frames the entire female experience in the world as passive suffering. It tells women that no matter what they do, they are forever trapped in cycles of trauma, social pressure, and supernatural punishment. The whole feminist overtone is just a disguise to sell you a philosophy of passivity and victimhood. To sell the idea that this is the average female experience and there's nothing they can do about it. Which is bullshit unless you want to assume modern women are stupid and lack agency. Which could be the case, let's be honest. But to tell them that they are just innocent angels trapped in a cruel world is selling them a vicious lie. The game objectifies weakness as a status symbol you can wear, and everybody else around you is to blame. And I will say for Silent Hill as a whole, as an idea, is that it's always been rooted in moral confrontation coming into reality. The horror is realizing that you build this nightmare yourself. Silent Hill F replaces this idea of self-confrontation and instead replaces it with self-affirmation to an insane degree. The game turns Hinako into a symbol of oppression and victimhood and lets her revel in an ideology of despair packaged as self-discovery, transforming her into a victimhood fetish. Essentially, the whole idea and mechanics of agency are reverse. Don't face your shadow, just run away with it. There's nothing you can do. After all, the world has already broken you. There's nothing to learn from this shit. Not even Dostoevsky was this fucking edgy. At least he had moral depth. Where the series once asked the player, what can I even do with my life when love, shame, grief, and regret consume me? Now it asks, how can I stop caring and move on? Notice the difference in this dynamic? One is incredibly haunting and beautiful for how human it is, while the other one is boss bitch conversion therapy. At best, if you're into Asian teenage drama with explicit violence, Silent Hill F is for you. But for the rest of us, reasonable people, this is terrible, man. Whoever is calling this story the best Silent Hill, or even on the top 5 Silent Hills, should really reconsider their life values. Because they're all messed up. I don't know what happened to you to be so emotionally and intellectually stunted. Who knows, maybe you're Canadian or something. But you gotta figure things out, man. This whole plot is too stupid, too immature, too artificially edited by an industry desperate to appear politically correct and trying to appease everybody to be held with such high regard. Good stories talk to the viewer without asking for permission. They don't try to win you over by blackmailing your emotions or pampering and inflating your ego and sense of victimhood. They present you with a brief moment in time in the lives of some people, with all their flaws and virtues, and trust you with the answers and responsibility to figure things out and make up your mind on what it all means to you. Good stories sometimes have to make a compromise. Writers need to understand what they want to communicate. And if you make the choice of delivering a bad ending, make it bad for its themes, not its execution or delivery. Good stories respect your intelligence. And good horror stories leave you with the truths you don't want to hear, rather than the lies you already believe in. Anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you for listening. Bye.